Hi friends, I'm Red Stegall. I'm an entertainer, author, and proud Texas rancher. I'm inviting my fellow cattle ranchers to join me in the Alamo statewide stampede, a simple way to help preserve our Texas heritage. When you sell your livestock, just let the auction house know you'd like some or all of the proceeds to go to the Remember the Alamo Foundation. If you don't have livestock, no problem. You can still take part by making a donation. These tax-deductible donations will go directly to the Alamo Plan, which is preserving the Alamo for generations to come. And together we'll ensure we always remember the Alamo.
Stories bigger than Texas, the Alamo podcast. Bright colors, big hats, and tall plumes. The military uniforms of the Texas Revolution are about as opposite as you can get from modern day khaki and camouflage. Today we reveal the practical reasons behind the ornate military fashion, how these intricate uniforms fostered morale within the ranks, and the uniforms that survived battles and time to be on display right here at the Alamo. I'm your host, Emily Balcom. We're joined by Tom Castanos, the Alamo's Director of Interpretation. Thank you for being here.
Oh, it's my pleasure.
Tom, military fashion has certainly evolved over the years. If you're going into combat today, you want to blend in with your surroundings. But in the early 1800s, that was not the goal.
Absolutely not. I mean, number one, you didn't have a really powerful weapon that could fire at long ranges. So hiding at these short ranges that they were fighting really wasn't possible. So they're going to go the complete opposite route. They're going to, look good, feel good. If you are in bright colors, it builds morale. There's all kinds of things built into that. But yeah, no hiding in this time frame.
Camo, like we use today, it helps you hide from long-range weapons. That's not an issue in the 1800s.
No, not at all. Quite the opposite. If you're going to keep people motivated and inspired to move forward, you want them to feel their best. And that sounds so ludicrous, but it plays such a big part in this. These weapons have an accurate range of just not even 100 yards. So they have to have as many people as they can, all firing the same direction to have any kind of mathematical chance to hit a target. So to keep people all stuck together, which by the way, also makes them a big target for people shooting back, to have them stand there and what we would think is just suicidally stand shoulder to shoulder, they have to feel like the people on each side of them have their back. They're all a part of a team and they're all the best team. So it comes into this kind of idea of putting the right clothes on the man to make them feel bigger, stronger, big tall hats to make them feel like they're bigger than the opponent, epaulets to make the shoulders look wider. It's a kind of a psychology game.
And again, to restate the obvious, what you just said, if you're at close range, those big uniforms make people look like even bigger targets. But that's not what they were concerned with. They wanted to look imposing.
Absolutely, imposing. So if, unlike popular Hollywood movies of the time periods where they always charge together and pair off like dancing partners at the very end, typically one side or the other in warfare in the 18th and 19th century would break and run before the other side ever reached hand-to-hand bayonet combat, things like that. So a part of this ultimately deadly Red Rover game is you feeling like you're going to psych out the opponent and the opponent doesn't feel as good about themselves and one side breaks before the other does. So that's kind of how many of these engagements would be settled.
So a large hat or tall plumes, it makes a small man look larger.
Small man look larger. Big crossed white belts on the front of a jacket give the appearance of a broader human being. And again, like I said, epaulets make the shoulders look broader. A lot of times because these armies are conscripted amongst poor farmers, this is the best set of clothes they've ever owned. They're not tailor fit. They're going to fit like horrible potato sacks on most of them. Still the best set of clothes they ever owned, warm in the winter. I think back to maybe you and I, whether it's junior high or high school, whether it was band or your volleyball team or whatever, the first time you actually get to put the game jersey on, you feel unbeatable with your teammates. You're all dressed in your best uniform. Now, of course, in the other gym, theoretically, they feel exactly the same way. You have to go forward and execute. But getting to that feeling that you can be successful is half the battle.
So we are talking uniforms creating camaraderie,
Absolutely.
morale.
That's right. You're not alone. You don't stand alone. You stand with many.
We're also talking about a time way before radio communication. How did the uniforms help with communication on the battlefield?
As much as flags and drums and bugles played a part, sometimes certain militaries use different colored plumes to differentiate different regiments or different companies within the regiment. Colored discs on top of their tall hats would let them know that that's A company or B company. So a commander from a distance, already difficult to see with the smoke of a battle, could theoretically tell which units were moving, which ones weren't, issue orders, say, over there, and visualize where these pieces are, rather than in today's battlefield, you have satellite imagery and maps and radios. Now it's all up to as much visual sighting as you can. So having different uniforms and different plume colors help them differentiate the troops.
Or what if a general is sending maybe a courier to a place that they don't have eyes on and needs to tell the courier how to identify this group of people?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a part of it. Nationally, you'd kind of hope that they all paired off and had their own individual color, but that didn't happen. So, friendly fire incidents were still a problem when both sides showed up in blue jackets or something like that. But couriers, the opponents, and your own comrades, a long line of soldiers, a battalion could be upwards to 1,000 men. You're looking down that line. You're looking for all the people that look like you. Are they moving forward? Are they moving backwards? You want to be a part of a unified group that stays in cohesion.
So if both sides of a battle are using the same psychology, it's a draw. What happens?
It is. It's going to matter as to who believes in themselves the most.
Let's bring in Cameron Lyman, one of the Alamo's living historians. Cameron, tell us who you typically portray while you're dressed out in period clothing.
On a typical day here at the Alamo, I portray one of the Texian defenders. From time to time, I do put on the coatee and portray a Mexican soldado.
For you and other living historians dressed as soldiers, visitors can practically spot you from a mile away. What are some common questions you get?
Most of the time, people ask, what's with the tall hat or the colorful coat? They can't understand why the uniforms are so colorful and easy to spot.
What do you tell them?
Well, I tell them that the perspective of warfare at that time is a lot different than our perspective of warfare today.
That's true, as Tom said. Who makes your clothes?
It's a good question. There are various individuals across the country who make this stuff, some of them commercially, others do it as a favor for their friends. I like to say that I'm one of those people that makes some of the clothes. In fact, everything that I wear myself, I've made.
That's really cool. What kind of research goes into it?
Quite a bit. Specifically with the Mexican Army, a lot is unknown about their uniforms at this time. We basically try to find old government contracts or uniform regulations from the era and kind of use that as a base to work off of. Purchase records are very helpful as well, although sometimes not very descriptive.
What kind of fabrics do you use? Do they mimic what would have been used 200 years ago?
Yes. Everything that we use is all natural fibers. Typical for military uniforms of this time, it's a lot of wool, broadcloth or kersey with a nap to it. If you're portraying a Texan, there's a lot of cottons and linens and homespun cloth, a very wide variety, even silk.
You've even made some of the bags you wear for equipment, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep. I've made a knapsack for the Mexican Army out of cowhide. My fingers are still recovering, but pretty fun projects, things that are unique that not very many people have recreated.
You do have a summer uniform and a winter uniform with these different fabrics.
That's right. Specifically with the military, even the United States has a summer and a winter uniform at this time. I usually see them switch on May 1st, and then they switch back October 1st. But, here at the Alamo, being a part of living history, we have a little bit more say in what we wear day to day.
Especially with that Texas heat. Earlier, Tom spoke about the morale these intricate uniforms provided to frontier soldiers. When you put on these uniforms, do you find yourself more confident, standing up a little straighter?
Of course. People notice it. They see the uniform and they have respect for it. And even the way that the clothing is cut, they're not allowing the soldier to slouch without some discomfort.
Also joining our conversation is Misty Lam, the Alamo's collections manager. Misty, we have uniform artifacts on display right now that after this episode, many listeners might look at in a new light when they walk into the Alamo exhibit at the Ralston Family Collection Center.
Yes, that's correct. So on the first floor, we have one of the Mexican military's helmets, and that came from the Phil Collins collection. And then in the second floor, we have part of the Huffines collection. This is a really amazing, incredible collection. He has so many fantastic artifacts. And the ones that we have out on display right now are a uniform jacket, epaulettes, and a chapeau. And these are really great to have because they belonged to Santa Anna and Sam Houston. And so we have a jacket that belonged to Santa Anna, we have epaulettes that belong to both of them, and a chapeau, which is a type of hat that belonged to both Santa Anna and Sam Houston as well.
The details in these artifacts are so intricate. The helmet that's part of the Phil Collins collection, you can see the plume made out of horsehair. And then in the Santa Ana uniform in the Huffines collection, that thread, that gold thread is made out of real gold.
Yes, it's actually surprising the first time that you pick one up how heavy it is because it is real metal. You go into it with a modern mindset and you think that it's dyed thread like it would be today, and you pick it up and it's like, wow, there's some heft to that.
I've also seen some other pieces in the artifact vault that will be on display in the future visitor center and museum. Remind us the special care that goes into preserving something like a uniform, a textile.
Yes, so textiles are kind of like documents in the fact that they are very light sensitive. And so if we have one of those out on display, we leave it for a very long time. We might take it off and say you move the sleeve of it or something like that, and you'll find an area that's darker because maybe one part of it got a little too much light and it faded, and then you have a dark area that didn't get as much light. And so we have to really take care of those. That is one of the groups of artifacts that we make sure to rotate out and through on a pretty regular schedule so that we don't cause any damage to them.
They're just so delicate to pick up.
They are, and also another consideration is how we display them, really, because some of them, you know, a jacket you would typically hang up on a hanger, well, if the shoulders have a little bit of weakness in those seams and things like that, we could risk causing damage to the threads and to the material. So we just have to be very mindful with it.
For sure. Now, bringing back in Tom and Cameron, there is just something about seeing these uniforms in person that brings history to life. There's so much art and detail behind these items that were worn in battle.
You know, we have a different mindset today with our military. You go in and you're in camo and you're trying to be under the radar and that sort of thing and sneak in there. But at that time, there's a ceremonial aspect. There's a dressing up and there's a feel to it, and there is rank and all of those things that can be shown through the uniforms. It's different, and looking at them today, it's very impressive. But then to imagine someone on horseback and they have their sword and their helmet and they have this uniform coat on and all of the different accoutrements, and it's just very impressive and likely some degree intimidating.
Definitely. People ask me, you know, when I'm wearing my Mexican Chaco, what is there a functionality behind that hat? And I tell them, absolutely not. It's all just going back to military tradition. And like you're saying, Misty, just looking intimidating. It's going to add an extra foot to the soldier's height.
I think that's such a funny point that you mention it, because when you go look at that Santa Ana jacket, I look at it and I'm not sure that it would fit me. He was a rather small individual, and so often whenever we get these uniform pieces in, you know, I don't try them on. We don't do that. But you hold it up kind of to yourself, to your front. And we have a piece of breastplate armor. I hold that up and it's like, I don't think I would fit this. So this was a male standard size at the time. Like, how different humans have become.
Like we said at the beginning, it's crazy to think this is what you went to war to die in, right, or to be killed in. But it just has an air of, I think of toy soldiers, I think of Nutcracker, I think of all these kinds of imageries that I grew up with, that this is what a soldier is. And of course, now today it means something entirely different. But to see our living history people dressed out, it really brings to life what it must have looked like, and also the practicality or lack thereof. You know, what it must have been like to live in that time period.
I've told people on tours when we stop in the first floor of the Alamo exhibit at the Ralston Family Collection Center, we see in the Phil Collins collection that Mexican helmet. Mm-hmm. To me, it's a work of art. Mm-hmm. I cannot imagine wearing it in battle.
Right.
But that's the kind of thing that was worn.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And again, the clothes make the man. And they had to believe they were the very best. And those kinds of little baubles and shiny things may have just helped do that.
Tom Castanos, Cameron Lyman, and Misty Lam, thank you so much for joining us. Be sure to check out the podcast notes. We are going to link photos and videos of some of the artifacts we just discussed so you can take a closer look. You can always come see them in person in the Alamo exhibit. We'll also have a link to where you can plan your visit. You've been listening to Stories Bigger Than Texas, the Alamo Podcast.